Were you in the room when Ethan just said that Johnny's gonna come just a few minutes late? Okay,
I heard that.
like, remember the timing of that?
I mean, we can give them a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, up to you.
We may not have,
We do, yeah.
we have quorum,
Mhm.
okay. So Sarah Lee might join us virtually.
She emailed and said, can I join virtually? So I said, yep, absolutely.
Okay. And
It's an election year, is it?
it's, yeah. It's the election for Deschutes County Commissioner seat number 2 is about 7 weeks away.
No,
6 or 7 weeks away.
so you're out there kissing babies and such?
You need your baby kiss?
Have a baby, good news is kiss, yeah. I'm a friend, kiss a baby.
Are you a citizen? All right, I'm not spending any of my campaign time on you.
No, they didn't kiss there.
Your baby's probably.
Oh, you got your passport and everything.
Oh.
And my wife, I can chew area pretty good, so. Working on it.
You know, you may be hearing from me offline.
Where is Aaron right now?
I don't know, he answered his phone though,
Oh, okay.
and, you gave me the
Australia.
information back,
How was it?
It's good, good to see your family,
Out
your friends, all that.
the
jazz.
shoots back,
But yeah, I don't know if I
a
feel
little
good.
bit, no depredations,
Yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
yeah.
and the pear, but that great Matolia.
Yeah.
More
Like,
depredations.
nurse the baby on the plane to get them to be
One
calm.
radio
That works for a couple hours. but-
No,
I didn't
Make
think
it
it
he had one in track last year and he got away before he took it
Yeah,
off.
you love it.
Like,
So he said he hasn't gotten a call on it, but he
Oh.
has game cameras out.
but that was good. He actually quite enjoyed.
Whenever
the
he-
Plane rides, because he had an undivided attention.
Knows that they're in the area, he calls the ranchers.
Okay. Good.
I've been
Yeah, we have another one.
driving around out here trying to learn that area. Very interesting.
Um,
Give me kids phone? Yeah.
so
16-year-old son.
out towards Roller Bridge then,
Mhm.
okay. I've only gone to that area once.
On the other side, east side of Green
He
Ridge,
travels okay.
where it's I've been
Yeah.
going.
He's a bit, he's old enough to
Starting
be a
at
bit of a.
Highway
curmudgeon
20
about,
and Ford
I don't really want to
campground
go
kind of.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Lemon Road,
Yeah.
where you go, out Wilt Road,
At least when they're-
Sisters.
At least when they're.
Been a few times out that way,
Got it.
not too far, not only
Oh.
once to that lower bridge when you're going to our,
Maybe give them till
mentioned
5:35.
Street. Susan just took me the back way through that area, so. saw
I think
it.
everybody be really.
Lower
excited to
Bridge.
Hear how much.
Is on the
money we
Metolius,
got.
right? Yeah, down at the very far end,
Not,
We're gonna do a reveal.
well.
on
I
the
think
west side of
the
Green
Crooked-
Ridge.
Crooked River
Johnny,
Oh,
is-
you're talking about that lower bridge.
Trying to get.
We crossed the-
Oh, Crooked River Ranch area.
sorry, I wasn't, my birthday was a little too greedy for your instructions.
That was me in the back way. Sisters. Well, I won't say that way, but I've never been there.
Right, but we haven't officially started.
Oh. To Terrebonne, that area. Interesting country, I just never really.
It-
toured
it
that.
is.
Yeah.
Well, should we go ahead and jump in? Hopefully Sarah Lee will appear as a disembodied head on our screen.
If you see it, just holler out, cause she has to be accepted in,
Oh,
so if I
I get it.
miss it, just holler
Yeah.
out and I'll get her in there, but I'll try to keep looking.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another Wolf Depredation Compensation and Financial Assistance Committee meeting. We do have some really exciting news to share about funding allocation for our county. And beyond that, I mean, some of the agenda today is gonna flow from that, what we're going to do with those funds, but Jen also has some kind of statewide updates to share with people. And yeah, and we have a lot of planning to do around outreach, education, and preventive measures work. So I think we should go ahead and just dive right in. Maybe we can make the rounds of the table, and Donna, would you like to start?
On who I am?
Yes.
Oh, Donna Harris, retired DVM and wolf advocate position.
Gordon Jones, I'm a business owner, and I guess it's the ecotourism business. We have a lodge in Camp Sherman.
Bill Channing, one of your 3 county commissioners here in Deschutes County, and the liaison to the committee at this point.
I'm Ethan O'Brien. I am one of the ranchie representatives on the committee.
Johnny Leeson, livestock producer.
Steve Papa, large animal veterinarian and business owner in the county.
Jen Patterson, Deschutes County Committee Support Staff.
Okay. Before we jump into the substance of this meeting, we'll entertain a motion. If anyone is ready to move to approve our December 6th meeting minutes, or if anyone has revisions or modifications that they want to talk about.
Just a correction that instead of Longfellow Ranch, it's Long Hollow Ranch on the first page on the first 2 things. That's all. Great. You did all right on the second part, but
Thank you for that.
yeah.
And if you ever have any edits too, when I send them out, you're more than welcome to send them to me, so then that way I can,
Do it.
you don't have to, but I will make that edit.
Okay.
I need a motion to approve that.
Oh,
As modified.
As modified?
and I will second that motion.
Oh, okay, yep, I'll motion it then.
Oh,
I thought you were motioning. Anyways, we're all
Oh,
good,
well.
there's 2 of us.
Seconded by
Seconded.
Donna. Excellent. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
On to our update on wolf committee activities throughout the state.
Great, this is me. I'll just give just a quick update. So ODA, Oregon Department of Agriculture, held a webinar for those of us doing actually like filling out the grant application work. And on that webinar was a lot of representatives, either staff support or committee members, or a version thereof both on the call. And so it really became an opportunity for us to ask some technical questions on how to write the grant, but then to, if you Hi, Sarah Lee.
Welcome, Sarah Lee.
So I'll just continue with my update here. So it was an opportunity for a lot of us to start having this discussion. And one of the things that came up repeatedly was that when individual counties start a wolf committee, we're just basically left to our own devices on how to write the charter, what to include in that, what should the committee talk about? What are the orders of talking about that? How to basically all of the committee business. There's no really guidance or materials from the state or other resources to tap into. So kind of just, going at it on our own. We're trying to do individual outreach. So there's a group of us who are really interested in kind of trying to put together a toolbox for other committee members. Hi, come on in.
Sorry, I'm late.
No, you're good.
Wolf committee meeting, right?
You are here at the right
Right
place. We're just getting started, but do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
I'm Scott Dugan with Oregon State Extension. I'm the livestock agent for the 3 counties in Warm Springs.
And Scott, Jen Patterson, we met out in Prineville
Yeah.
6 weeks ago, maybe, or somewhere, so welcome. And there's agenda and meeting material information over there if you're interested.
That's food.
And food,
And
yes,
drinks and snacks.
yeah, everything over there. Healthy.
Food first.
And so there's an interest in several of us kind of meeting on some sort of regular basis, we haven't figured out yet, to really develop some materials and resources and a toolbox that will be a little bit more applicable for all committee members throughout the state on guidance on like what order should committees start doing business? How do they do that? How do they go about it? Is there a way to information share on, there's a lot of institutional knowledge out there. So I volunteered, I'm interested in doing that. So I've been joining up with a couple of other committee members and staff support and other elected officials. There's a wide variety of people. But from Wheeler County, I think Grant County, Klamath County. So we don't have a formal group put together yet, but there have just been some initial discussions on that and some information of contact sharing information. So in preparation for that, I reached out to some people to get some background information on maybe some other topics we're forming here, but it's really in the infant stages of that. Along with that, the woman who's actually really instigated that conversation is Carmen Oakes, and she's from Wheeler County. She owns a ranch out there. She's on the committee, and she's also like the lone staff support, I think, for that committee. So kind of been flying solo, but has been for quite several years. I think 2016, 2018, somewhere in there, that she's been really invested in this. So she's brought together a few of us who indicated interest, as well as representatives from ODA, ODFW, and some other experts that she's been working with. And we're going to go out to her ranch on April 12th. And she's, it's very informal, potluck style. We're all just showing up there. And what she really wants to do is bring kind of some of these talking heads together. And one, she wants the experts to show her how to set up preventative measures on her ranch in ways that are effective versus just trying to like read about it and then implement it on herself. So doing a little bit of hands-on training on the implementation, but also really starting this initial conversation of like, how can we work together more as a state collective from these committees? Because this is a state-run program, but ODF&W and ODA aren't necessarily talking to each other. Like we have to get our materials from ODF&W and then submit it up into ODA. And there's no, when I called ODA, when we were even thinking about even starting a committee before we even had an application out, there wasn't any resources available. It was just like, read this, here's our online website. So we're starting that conversation on April 12th in person in Spray at Carmen's Ranch, and then we're gonna continue that. So I see this as a broader, probably outlasting even some of these committee members here, conversation of, getting the conversation going throughout the state. Some counties have had this up and running for a very, very long time. Others like us are brand new, and then there's still some counties coming online as the wolf population starts to spread and expand throughout the state. So I just wanted to update you on that. I'll continue to update you as information is gathered through that. Just as a reminder, in between committee meetings, really the only way to update is sending through a BCC email. We can't have an email chain where people are responding to that we get in violation of public meeting laws. And then if there's relevant information or if there's anything anyone wants to hear or people want to contribute in any way to these efforts, let me know, but I'll continue to update. I'm guessing it's going to be a slow rolling process on this. A lot of people have, including myself, have a lot of other things going on and not able to dedicate full time to this, but something of interest. So just wanted to give you all of that information. If there's any feedback, I'm willing to take that now or continue just to proceed as we're going forward on it.
Well done.
Yeah.
One question, Jen, would be if there was committee members who wanted to, work with you on this network, helping to build this, statewide network, is that
Yeah, I think
is that
that's
welcome and helpful, or is that too many cooks in the kitchen, or?
I think it's a little premature for me to say that because I haven't been to any of these meetings. And apart from that ODA webinar where it was really about the grant writing and we just started like Carmen was saying this, I was like, I'm super interested. Here's my contact information. And then I've had several phone conversations with Carmen. So then I've started to realize what Carmen started this by, it's just been a lot on her. She wasn't sure how to write the application. So she wrote this really long letter to ODA, which she did. I haven't seen a copy of it, but she shared the body of it to me over phone. Was like, these are all like, we don't have the resources. And then she put together like, these are my proposed solutions to moving forward in a meaningful way. And, instead of just complaining to ODA about like, we're not getting the resources that we need, or we don't have the templates that we need. These are some of the things that I think that we could do to move forward. And so starting to put this ad hoc kind of grouped together was the first step, but she just sent this letter, I think, in October or November, so I think at our next committee meeting, I might be a little bit more well-versed to be able to discuss that question. Certainly, I wouldn't say no to anyone on any of this, but I'm not also sure what the next steps are moving forward. I think coming out of this April 12th meeting at Carmen's Ranch will give us a lot, or at least give me a lot more information on kind of the direction. I'm not looking to take over Carmen's efforts, but I would definitely like to help supplement those efforts. And so I think once I see kind of how that conversation flows, if it does, or if they're gonna, a lot of that's still in the initial frameworks. But yes, I don't think the initial answer there is no. Yes, but I need to kind of gather a little bit more information. That's helpful.
I could imagine like a once a year conference.
So that was one of her
Being a great-
suggestions,
being a
actually.
great thing to-
And then have it hosted kind of centrally somewhere. So that was one of her suggested comments or suggestions. I'll try to get a hold of her letter that she sent to ODA, and then I can include it in our next meeting packet. And I just think it was really helpful because she's had some time on the ground to really think about like what has been missing in the process for them, and then how to move forward. And then also Wheeler County unfortunately just had their first depredation. So she's also then just starting to come on board after that, even though their committee has been set up a little bit longer. They didn't actually have a depredation until in the last month or two, maybe 3, I think. It was very recent depredation. So not on her ranch, but something the committee is now starting to form. But I'll get a hold of that letter that she sent. I think it's pretty public, and then be able to share that around in our next meeting packet. And if we have suggestions going forward on as we're learning this process, we can bring that too.
So, are we ready to move on to item?
Yeah, unless anyone has any questions for me or comments or guidance. Ready to move on.
Right, so on to the depredation grant allocations.
You want me to brief on this?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes, please.
So as you will know, there's a supplemental piece of paper that I just printed off. We just got the grant award announced late Thursday evening. Yes, so that was great. Overall, I think it looks pretty good for what we were prepped with this, the state on what they're provide. So we did request $1,935 in depredation funds. That was 100% funded from the state. We requested $5,371.50 in missing livestock funds. This is again for Ashante's Ranch. We were granted 50% of that at $2,685.75. Now, as a reminder, or some of you may not know this, the state didn't give any missing funds last year. So to get 50% of what was requested, I think is a good step forward. And just a quick sidebar on that one, I think we talked about this at the last meeting, but one of the, there's a movement in the legislature to do a multiplier and getting rid of the missing funds. And so basically what that means is that there's a confirmed depredation by ODF&W, based on the compensation rates set by the committee, there will be an automatic multiplier. So this in Wyoming, there is a multiplier 7 times that. The thought process behind that is if you have one depredation, you surely if your livestock or your herd has been impacted greater than just that one depredation. So instead of doing these missing funds, they just do an automatic multiplier of like that depredation compensation rate times 6 times 7, whatever the legislature does, but that's a state legislature law. So it was up for in the 2024 long session.
Short.
So originally it was in the 2023 long session and it didn't get picked up. 2024 session, it got a tiny bit of movement and then it didn't get included in the final package, which was not surprising. The short session was pretty specifically focused on a couple of key highlighted issues. That movement is growing to really bring that up again in the 2025 long session. So I wouldn't be surprised to see what kind of movement happens on there, but that discussion will happen again. And I think in the meantime, this is just an educated guess, but based on the conversation I'm having, the state ODA realizes there's a hole there of the compensation rates. And so I don't know if that was their thought process on funding the missing funds that were requested this time. I did have a conversation with Klamath County, and I know they got some missing funds also awarded. I don't know at what rate, but I'm guessing they sent a percentage rate across the board on what they were funding, and it was pretty consistent. And then the last thing we got awarded, we requested $70,000 in non-lethal preventative measure funds. A good chunk of that was for Shante Samuel's ranch, and then some of that was for the committee work. And then we got that funded at 40%. We got $28,000 awarded. So that's the pool of funding. So a total of $32,620.75, which I think is good news for a first-time committee submitting a grant award. After this meeting, the next steps in the process were, during this meeting, the committee members will discuss on kind of like how you want to allocate particularly those non-lethal preventative measure fundings. And then I will bring it before the board next week. The committee, we do our process in the county for any grant applications, we have to go before the board to request, board approval to apply for grants. And then once we've been awarded grants, to accept those grants. So I'll have to go before them next week. I thought I'd wait on that conversation until you all were able to decide kind of how you want to divvy out, particularly the preventative measures. I think category 1 and category 2 are pretty straightforward. Those were applied for on behalf of Shante Samuels. He submitted a lot of paperwork. I worked with his ranch hand extensively in the weeks leading up to the application deadline. And so we were able to receive a lot of information from them on what we needed to submit the grant application and be successful in those. And so then the real question on the table here is how does the committee want to allocate those $28,000 funds? So there was more than that was requested from the Shante Samuels Ranch, plus the committee's own requests. And I'll just also say that in order to receive depredation funds, there does have to be preventative measures implemented at branches where there's depredations happening. And Shante has demonstrated that in his paperwork, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Quick question, before we jump into the preventative non-lethal kind of funding allocation, the missing stuff, did you ever get any application from Ashante?
I did, yeah, and that is what we used to apply for. Let me just pull it up so
Is that the one you emailed? Or did we get that one? I thought we had one from that got
I emailed you guys the entire grant package per Commissioner Tang's suggestion, which was a great suggestion, and it was included in there.
Yeah.
That grant package was pretty, I think, 20-30 pages, so there was a lot of information there, but
Get me to try it.
none of your emails just went through. Let me just pull it up real quick, though. It's just to say exactly what was.
While Jen's
Yeah.
looking for that, if I could also just say, this is why we set this committee up. So, we needed to create a system and a process by which, our community, Deschutes County, can deal with, the arrival of wolves, the return of wolves to this area, and the potential impacts they might have and the conflicts that might arise with the livestock producer. So I just want to specifically thank all of you, committee members, for making it possible for our community to tap into these state funds and to support our livestock producers, to support efforts to coexist with the wolves. Congratulations. And thanks to Jen for running.
You guys did all the work. I
Doing all the,
I think it's
doing all
Yeah.
running all the red tape to make it happen.
Well, it was, yeah, to me, I thought that was good news when we saw the grant award, so I do have the application or the supplemental documents that Shante submitted, and so he submitted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What he labels as killed and 1 missing, so a total of 6 livestock. That is his ranch hand and Ashante, and I think Sarah Lee also alluded to, maybe they thought there was more than that, but that was I think the committee set the limit on how much we would consider there without having further detailed information at the time of the meeting of the last meeting. And I apologize, 4 killed, 2 missing, and then he put in the very specific rates. There was 2 calf killed, 1 dairy heifer, 1 other heifer, and then 2 calves went missing, and with the average weight on there. And then so used our compensation rates for that supplemental. So his total request was $10,743. The committee at the time, without having the detailed information, said they would fund up to 6 missing requests at 50%. So that's why we submitted the request for $5,361.50, and then the state funded that at 50%. So I think, again, I still think it's good news. I know that the impact with that, with the ranch, Long Hollow Ranch, is probably significantly financially more, but for it being the first application going through, I would consider that good news on what was submitted and what was granted. And then I'll just reiterate for the record, while Ashante put in, and this came up in public records from the meeting when we put this in, because this application was there, and somebody had a question of like, how are there so many killed, or, you know, for the record, I think the news media actually came back with me and asked this question, as like, you're saying these many were killed, but you only put in one. We as a committee can only, for depredation rates, can only put in what ODFW has verified as a kill. So
Did Aaron Bott, because he's kind of the man on the spot, did he kind of think that that sounded about right?
Yep, I had several conversations with Aaron. They submitted their official depredation report to me that I was able to submit along with the grant paperwork. But yeah, Aaron was in support per the committee. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want me to refresh your memories on how much was requested by Ashante versus committee work for the preventative measures, or you?
Well, I was gonna add that, I was gonna ask about that, so. We asked for a total of 70,000 of preventative non-lethal. Funding, we got 40% of that. Is there? I mean, they didn't give us back any expectations, like, oh, basically all the categories of stuff you asked for, you know, you get 40%. You know, across the board, they just said, here's $28,000, do with it what you see fit.
Yep. So it's up to the committee.
And I mean, it was necessary to have the livestock producer who had experienced the losses propose specific preventative measures specific to their operation, but the state didn't say you need to give a certain amount of this to that livestock producer.
That's correct. The livestock producer has to demonstrate in their supplemental details that they have preventative measures when there is a depredation. Ashante did that. If there's another depredation on the ranch, they'll have to continue to do that. So would any other livestock producer. But there is not a stipulation of these preventative measure funds, because also as a reminder, the depredation missing funds are retroactive. The preventative measure funds are going forward.
Yeah. Reimburse him for stuff he's already done. Yep.
Yeah.
Or reimburse him for stuff that he's going to do.
Going to, yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be reimbursed. I don't think for preventative measures, we wouldn't use the term reimbursed, because it's going forward. It's
Funding.
funding going forward. So April 1st, 2024 through, I think it's January 31st, 2024. I'll have to look this up again. I'm trying to find that really quick, but it's the preventative measure funds are from like the dates the award is going forward. So we can't reimburse for what's happened in the past. I think part of that was, and Sarah Lee was talking about this at the last meeting, was we were looking for like the yearly annual renewal of the callers, because there's an annual fee, but we can't pay for what they spent last year or for the software that they already have up and running, or the towers they already have up and running. One of them was to add another tower potentially going forward.
And mechanically, how this is gonna work, is the state gonna send us this money upfront? Okay.
Yep.
And then we will, you know, Shanti will incur expenses
Yep.
from the date of this award forward. And then we will reimburse him for those expenses. He'll give us documenting, you know, like I ordered the collar, you know, license for another year. Here's the you know, the paid invoice documentation, we'll reimburse.
That's not, in my understanding, I can read some of the fine print, and this will be a question going forward, but the reporting out doesn't happen until December and January of next year. So I believe that the committee says we have 28,000, we wanna give 20,000 to Shanta, making this number up, 28,000 to Shanta for the measures, I believe we can cut him that check. Now, he will have to show paperwork and demonstration and reporting on how he spent that funds, but it is not this is not a reimbursable grant program, it is a grant program, then you have to justify. So if he doesn't use it for if he can't justify that he used it for what was said, then I think we'll try to get those funds back, and the same for us, if we don't use the 28,000 from what we said in whatever capacity, then we return those funds. But as another refresher too, those preventative measure funds, so let's say we gave $20,000 to Ashante and we say, this is to cover your collars and your tower. But then Ashante gets on the ground, he's like, oh, it'd be much better for me to actually use that for range riders. Those funds can be used for any non-lethal preventative measures, like just up to the committee if you want to accept that, but there's not restrictions in the state. If you know, we said what we applied for, we're gonna then show them what we used it for. If it's outside of what we actually applied for, but it's within any sort of non-lethal preventative measures, it's fine. So it doesn't have to like, we asked for this specifically and we have to show we use this for specifically. We just have to say, we got this and this is how we used it.
Yeah. So maybe it would be good to look at what we submitted.
And it's in the,
so-
it will actually be in the meeting minutes of, last time. So what we submitted was, so $25,000, this is for Ashante, $25,000 to cover the cost of a new tower and for invisible fencing. I see a typo in that too, I'll fix that. And then additionally $20,000 for seasonal range riding. So total $45,000 for Ashante, and then this committee asked for $5,000 for educational and outreach funds and $20,000 for preventative measures stemming from outreach and education funds. So like, if there was a rancher who got in contact with us and said, hey, I also want to do this on my ranch, there was a pool of funding for that. So 45,000 was requested on behalf of Long Hollow, and then 25,000 was requested on behalf of the committee. Yes.
After reading the article in the paper and, thinking about this a little bit, it seemed to me like we had, approved an awful lot to just one rancher right out of the box. And obviously so did the state, I think, because they didn't fund everything we asked for. But I called Aaron today and talked with him because I was curious. I have also done a lot of driving around out there trying to get a sense of, that country and, the ranches that, Asante, manages or has. And, Aaron gave me some pretty, I think, good up-to-date information. There haven't been any more incidences other than one depredation that turned out to be coyotes. And, of the lost cattle or the missing cattle, as I understand it, they haven't found any of them. But I think that's always going to be a difficult thing when cattle go missing, and it's up to the rancher, as I understand it, talking to Aaron, to provide information verifying that there's more that's gone missing this year than in past years somehow, and to verify that with records, and also that it has to have occurred in an area of known wolf activity, which of course that is. So I don't know what we've requested from Ashanti, but I think you talked about that a little bit. He did provide some.
It was in the
additional
supplemental documents. Just for point of clarification, ODA does not require that we submit, that Aaron or any rancher submits paperwork to show that it's above and beyond the previous year. Like that is not a requirement. They have a guideline of things for a committee to consider on the missing, but it is not a requirement of ODA. I did not have to submit documentation showing that the previous year, Ashante had X amount of livestock missing, and then last year after the depredation had X amount of livestock missing, and there's a difference there. And it's not also a requirement of ODF and W to verify the missing livestock. I think it goes back to that conversation we were saying earlier, that when there is a depredation, it is, I think, a lot of people's accepted belief that more than just the one cattle that was killed was impacted on that herd. But there's not a requirement of ODA for me to submit that paperwork, and I did not, and they still awarded that grant. It is something the committee can consider in future missing requests if that is the path that they want to go
Can
for.
we as a committee require that?
You guys. can
Otherwise,
set up-
you're in a position of just trusting.
Yeah.
What a rancher says, and I don't think that's a very good point of view for us to take as a committee representing the public. I just don't.
We still don't
And-
have any kind of written application process for county as to what's going on. I don't think you have to spend all your time working it up with them. They need to document and give it to us. So
I'm a little,
Who does?
the rancher,
The ranchers.
because we have a list of requirements from ODA. But there's nothing that, we don't have any kind of documentation that they're actually asking for this and that they can prove it.
The rancher.
that was my question, this afternoon, I looked on the ODA website, and it's true what Jen said there. There's a little bit different in how they're listing it, they have 4 pages of requirements, and that's how they stated requirement 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they go everything from, you know, having somebody out there like a brand inspector or a neighbor counting the cattle as they go into the allotment, then counting them as they come back out of the allotments, having that kind of proof, and they list a whole, I'm not gonna go through it all, I have 3 pages of notes, but requirement 2, you know, records, in count of those that are released and that come back. Requirement 3, sign an affidavit that no livestock, were, injured on, you know, certain pastures and allotments. There's just a whole line of things, and they call them requirements. But I would really like to see our committee sort of follow these guidelines, because when I looked at Ashanti's application, I didn't really see that backup. I saw him check mark, you know, some of the things, but I didn't see a lot of the backup that ODA was saying, and it's just a concern for anybody that's applying. Because of some abuse of the system in Eastern Oregon that occurred several years ago.
And so what we are specifically talking about right now are guidelines for the Deschutes County Committee for requests for
Missing, yes.
missing animal funds.
Mhm.
Jen's saying that missing is probably not gonna be an issue
Go away.
Well,
in the future. They can-
well,
I think
Mark that
like,
into
you
a
know,
percentage of
legislature doesn't
the
have it.
depredations.
I would
I
say
think
for
that
the,
bill, I
the legislative session for next year, it probably won't be in place before the grant application is due. What I will say, and you guys can continue to run this meeting without whatever topics you see most appropriate. But we won't consider missing funds until January of next year's meeting. So there's other times as well to build that in, potentially when we can get some additional information from other counties on how they're doing that. And it was brought up, I think, by you specifically in the last meeting. And that is on a potential future agenda item, is like to kind of establish some of these processes and procedures. But it's not time, as we have a year basically to establish those procedures. And I know we don't want to continue to punt that. But it's not necessary to move forward with the agenda items for today. Now, you guys can decide whatever you want to discuss, but.
yeah, I mean, I do think if we're going to have those kinds of requirements, it would be good to know what they are, so that, you know, in June, when so-and-so comes and says she has 2 animals missing, we'll be able to say, oh, well, you can claim missing animal, you can try to claim missing animals next year, this is what you're gonna have to tell us. So that, that livestock producer will know then, as opposed to, trying to reconstruct in January.
That's the same kind of thing you need it for killed too.
ODW.
Well,
Yeah, but,
yeah.
but
Yeah, they would,
They could.
You gotta apply for it.
They will upload their report on it, but we need to make sure they satisfied all the requirements. And then the same thing with these preventative measures is they have to apply for them.
Yeah.
Through us, one way or the other. Maybe that's something that you're.
and one thing to add on that ODA site, it actually had on there, and I wrote it down, pursuant to OAR 603-019-0015 2D, that they must account for all these 3-4
They
requirements.
must account for that too.
Yeah, but then you can read what Jen told us too, that, well, on the application, it's just sort of nebulous.
I mean, having
There's two extremes.
this was years ago, but having interacted with a number of county wolf committees in the eastern part of the state. There are a lot of folks who don't take kindly to state direction.
Yeah.
And state direction and state management of their processes. So it's quite possible that the system that ODA has is not, oh, they didn't get to it yet, and they didn't figure out how to do this yet. They may be leaving it intentionally loose.
I don't think it's fair to the rancher, number one, to not have some guidelines so that they know what they have to present and, they have to contact Oregon Department of ODF and W in a certain length of time, within a week, right? And they then go out and do an investigation, but they should know, Aaron, when he goes out there, should give them some instructions, I would think, on how to go about filling out the application, what the requirements are. Then we should get that in hand so that we could look at it and help us make a reasonable determination.
I don't know.
The other thing
Aaron's gonna give
that
them
I don't,
guidelines or
he's
something.
not
No,
gonna.
he hand over what we've written up or created.
or he could at least say they need to contact the county for those instructions.
Do they write a report every time they go out, no matter what they found?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if somebody has somebody that, oh, they're missing, they did an investigation, then we could get that report. I mean, that seems
That would be uploaded as part of the application.
right.
I would just say there's not necessarily reports on this livestock.
Obviously, okay, that's what.
And the other problem with, I would say, about that timeline, or I shouldn't say problem, from the conversations that I have, and this is a learning process for me, but the conversations I've had with Aaron, with other ranchers, with other committee members, is that particularly with missing, is you don't necessarily know time and point when your livestock is missing.
Right, yeah.
And so to file a report within a week and have that be a requirement could be not a possibility for some ranchers or for most ranchers. I don't know going forward if the state's still gonna consider filing these missing reports. Like I said, they didn't for a long time give any funds for missing, and this is a new thing where they started funding it again. I don't know why they did. I would, but I reiterate that I don't think if there's a legislative fix next year, it probably will not be in time,
Yeah.
given the timing of the legislation season. Or scheduled for the 2025 grant application.
Is there any way, can I say something really quick?
Yeah,
One of the things, the reason that Ashanti filed for the missing was that, we had depredation before we really understood what was going on and how, the process of getting in, it needs to be within a week and, you need to get a hold of Aaron Bot, like all these things. And so, being at the front edge of it, it was like funded for those missing things, which it seems to me those should go to Ashanti, but like moving forward, it sounds like there won't be missing cattle, and trying to simplify our situation and not deal with it is probably a good idea. The only reason we're doing it is the retroactive nature of the very first depredations.
Sarah Lee, are you saying for Long Hollow Ranch, you don't think there will be missing animals reported in the future? Or are you saying in general, you don't think that there's gonna be opportunities to get missing animal funding?
I'm saying both. In our case, like the animals are missing because they were killed by what we know to be wolves at this point, you know? And that's why we're applying for those funds. And we didn't have any other option, you know, when it first started happening. So now going forward, I mean, we don't want to just like, you know, speaking for Ashanti in this one ranch, you know, we're not trying to be like, oh, this many cows went out to range, this many cows came back, therefore we're missing 10, so we're applying for missing funds because we think that they were wolves. That's like, I don't think we want to get into that as a committee, and it sounds to me like the state doesn't want to either, because that does get abused. The reason that we did it this time is because we didn't have a system yet. So I think that, like, you know, having our education out there now that it's totally clear. I wish that this had all been clear when it started happening a couple years ago for us. And now we have a committee, we have this grant, it's very clear. It's like, you need to get in touch with Aaron, you know, you need to have this, you know, we're not making judgments about who killed the whatever. It's like Aaron tells us if it was killed by a wolf or not. And if people can't get that together with him, then that at this point, now that we have like a more solid thing set up, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it does make me wonder, so you got, for you guys, it was new, it was unfamiliar. Now you know everybody, now you kind of know what you're looking for. But what are the chances that we're going to have that those 5 wolves down in the southwestern corner of Deschutes County, that they're gonna start depredating? And there's gonna be livestock producers down in that part of Deschutes County who are experiencing this for the first time, have no idea what's going on. And a year from now, they'll be old hat with this, but the first go round, they'll be in a similar situation that you were. And how do we create a process that is also sympathetic to that early.
I guess I
experience.
appreciate that. I guess just to throw in that, like, the state seems to think that like the missing thing is just too gray. And at this point in Deschutes County, like when things were starting to be depredated here, we didn't even know there were wolves. You know, it's been in the news quite a lot. It's been in the newspaper. The Wolf Committee has been pretty well circulated. You know, it's like, it feels a little different. You know, it's like we have wolves now. The conversation is different. What you need to do to go about it. I mean, we lost a lot more than what we were able to even apply for. You know, we're going to end up not really getting much funding out of the deal. I just like, I don't know. It's not like, existing out here and having predators is just part of like life as a rancher, and that life is changing. And something that people are learning to deal with. But I just think that we should be kind of thinking about what the state is, the direction, that it's going. Like, I don't think we need to figure out the missing deal for the future. We just need to explain the preventative measures versus the depredation measures and make it very clear who to call in the case of an event and call it good.
If I could just give, so Jen shared some pieces of like the state policy discussion, but if I could give my take on why there's funds for missing animals this year. There has been this ongoing discussion about having a multiplier policy. I'm not persuaded that that's a slam dunk in the next legislative session even. There's gonna be, it's a contentious issue. So this multiplier bill, it may never get done. B, we've seen over the last couple of years this ramping up of state funding for the scope of activities that WOC committees are dealing with across the state. And I think that's why there's missing dollars this year when there haven't been in previous years. In previous years, they just said, we have so little money, we're gonna fund known depredations, we're going to invest in prevention, and there's nothing left. But I think maybe the ramping up of funding levels for Wolf Committee work has reached a point where they could say, oh, well, we are going to try to, address some of the missing impacts. So, if my interpretation is correct, then I wouldn't be surprised if we're dealing with if there will be opportunities to claim missing animals the next few years. So that would suggest that it would be useful to have a system and
Yeah.
process.
And have some
I agree.
guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the committee could do a multiplier.
Yeah, we're the kind of the safety net, we're the ones dispersing the funds, we can make up our own kind of requirements and we can stick to them ourselves. The state's kind of giving us that leeway.
Yeah.
That's our kind of role.
Yeah, and if they're not willing to like push more stringent processes in other counties, it doesn't mean that we, if the committee feels that we should have those processes, then it doesn't mean we can't.
And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You guys kind of all on the
Oh,
same
yeah.
page of that, around, kind of a bit more.
Well, for
He
instance,
said that you need to tick these boxes and fill out these paperwork to receive or be considered for missing funding. That's kind of, I don't know, kind of having on the same page and just making sure we're.
But I think
Yeah.
we need it for all, for killed, for missing, and for preventative.
Yeah.
Killed, they kind of have the one, they have to have the ODS report, right? So that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very
Part of it,
detailed
but
report that.
still all these things that are listed,
Right.
has to be on there. And I don't know if it's all in the same report.
Right. I guess it didn't have, I don't know what else I needed, but. Right, I was assuming this was all, most of that was on the report that they were doing. I guess I never saw it.
ODA considered that it was because they approved the grants.
Right.
So that list, so that's in our charter, that list was pulled from me, or knew anything about this, but strictly from ODA's website.
Yep.
So ODA has confirmed by giving us these grant awards that we submitted what we needed to submit in order to get these grants.
Yep.
I will also just say a little bit later in our discussion too, but I just want to preface this now. As you guys are discussing this, either that work, like creating forms, needs to happen during a committee meeting, or maybe there's another avenue for it, but there's not, I would say, staff resources need to be able to create and invent these forms. There's a lot of really great discussions and ideas coming out of a multitude of committee meetings, but there is a staff support shortage problem. And so I would just keep that in mind as you're saying what you want and what you would like to see. Is that something you can create within the confines of the committee? I'm happy to go and have these discussions and bring back supplemental information through phone conversations, but committee, doing a whole like application process and that sort of thing. So just something to keep in mind through your discussions. I'm not saying it can't happen. You guys can have whatever whatever the committee establishes, but it also needs to be kind of created primarily through.
That's something you might be able to ask these other county committees. Do they have a county?
I can tell you they do not.
Like,
I talked to Climate today, I've talked to Wheeler, I've talked to Crow Lake. If this discussion is a lot more in depth than these established committees are doing. So
I mean, many rural communities, when you say, hey, there's sort of like a vacuum of bureaucracy, they're like, sweet.
well,
Keep it that way.
Well,
So,
for instance, Wallowa County, a rancher reported 60 calves missing. Well, I'd be embarrassed as a rancher to say that I was missing 60 calves. What kind of raid writing is he doing? But anyway, there was no requirements. They got covered for 50%. And
Well, we got covered for 50%. I think they take a formulated rate.
I think so.
And it was mentioned earlier too about the preventative measures, what we had heard from Sunny Summers at the state. When she came and presented before the committee was, I think, they take a formulated rate of the request, typically speaking, unless there's extra circumstances, and they fund that. I think last year they only funded preventative measures at 30%. So the fact that they funded preventative measures at 40% this year, for us was very, very good. So I don't think it says that they didn't like our preventative measures request. It was, they have a formulated rate, 100, and she said this to us too last time, when she was here a couple meetings ago. Almost always depredations are at 100% missing, they didn't fund last year, and then I think the preventative measures were funded at 30% last year.
Alright, so can we, I mean, for the sake of getting to some of the other items on our agenda, can we flag this as? Can we flag this as, okay, we are gonna dedicate time at a future committee meeting to establish a. The documentation or the, the verification process that we wanna use.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless. I mean,
We second that?
I don't think this is actually not an agenda item, so I think we're good to
Yeah, we're just kind of like planning our future agenda.
kind of punt this conversation to a future agenda where we can dig into it.
One other thing I would say about this, and Jen and I were talking about this, is it is possible to have work groups or subcommittees of the committee that take a specific discrete task away and, move it down the field for us and then bring it back for review. So if anyone's like hearing about this.
3, yeah,
No more than 3?
no more than 3.
No more than 3 because of quorum issues, but if anyone's just dying to. Just dying to.
Well, the other issue
To work on
that
this.
is part of this is the preventive measures part. Because Ashanti isn't getting what we had approved, obviously. And I think what we didn't really look at is how many cattle does he have, how many collars does he need? I think we approved 1 tower. It was an open-ended kind of a thing, and that's also something we need to be more careful about, I think, in making the rancher needs to be more specific on exactly what they'd like to have. And then we would maybe approve what we feel is reasonable. But right now, I asked Aaron, how many cattle does Ashanti have? And he said, well, probably upwards of 1,000 head. That's a lot of collars. I don't know how much those collars cost. Nobody.
$50 each.
Yeah, it's
That's
$10,000, right?
Not on every cow.
Not every, just the cow,
Then we do that.
not the calf.
Scott probably know, what do you know about those fence collars?
Well, you're correct, you wouldn't, calf, you do the cow.
Uh-huh.
Every cow.
Yeah,
Well, it would depend on the allotment you're on and I don't know where they run or anything like that, but
Yeah. That's kind of information we need from the rancher. To
Yeah.
say, this is my plan.
Mhm.
This is how many collars I think would be helpful, and then we can judge the reasonableness of that and not just write a blank check. Anything?
Well, we didn't get the, I mean, what you're describing, we did, we said, okay, $50 a collar, how many collars? What does a range rider cost, how many hours? What does a tower cost? I mean, it was somewhat on the fly, but we did do the process that you're talking about, like of being specific about what you would ask for in terms of preventive measures. Now we're faced with, okay, well, we didn't get all that money. So which of those things are gonna be covered at what level?
And to who?
Yes.
Are we giving the money to Ashanti? Committee keeping some of the money?
Can we
Yeah.
ask,
If they keep it, how are they gonna use it?
Right, how much of what we did get is actually gonna go to Ashanti?
can we ask him now to make an application for what he wishes?
Yeah.
Based on potential availability.
Yeah, because we can't fund both range riding and collars, so you pick one. Are you there, Sarah Lawrence? Sarah Lee, sorry.
uh-oh.
Pick one and then.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I had it on mute.
we were just talking about, obviously, we don't have the funds to fund both requests for, you know, both your range riding and your collars. Do you have a preference on one in particular?
I think the collars would be the easiest thing, you know, to have like a black and white type of a thing, you know? So I think,
You can show a receipt kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly. You know, whereas like, I mean, we have a full-time cowboy and the range riding, you know, grant was supposed to maybe like compensate for part of the amount of riding that he's going to do that before the wolves were there, we probably wouldn't, you know, wouldn't have done that level of range driving, you know? So, I mean, one thing we could think about is like, if it got funded at 40%, why not give 40% of what was applied for to the ranch? You know, like, why don't we just cut everything by 40%? And then that way it's not like, oh, we are deciding what you get to do. It's like, to Jen's point, it's like you can do anything in the preventative measures just as long as you provide your proof of doing the thing, you know, receipts or whatever.
I mean, 40, yeah, it's true. That's a good way to, that's kind of what I was thinking, I just the math, 46% is what we got up to requested, so their allocated would be $20,700. That's 46% of what they applied for.
Then that would be
Uh-huh.
about $8,000 for me.
Yeah.
And we'll just point out now some of the, in looking back on this, some of these, you know, we also, the committee, I shouldn't say, but the committee also determined just just pick some numbers on like, oh, we're gonna use this for education outreach sources and this for additional preventative measures that may be applied for future ranchers and that going forward. Since that time, I've talked to several different counties on kind of preventative measures that they've done, on outreach campaigns that they've done. And also talked to Nick Lilac, who is county administrator, on kind of staff support, time and resource about able to do that. So if there's $8,000 and the committee wants to do $3,000 for an outreach and education campaign, again, all of that work will have to be within the committee. We could develop an ad or something, but then what are we asking for the outreach campaign? Who are they contacting? What information are they getting from those people? Are we ready to do that, or do we want to use it for workshops or something else or other techniques going forward? But all of that will need to be work completed within the committee members, within the time constraints of the committee members for the most part. Again, I am very interested in this topic, really interested in supporting as much as I can, but I have limited ability to do that. So like, if there's a workshop putting it together, who's putting that workshop together? Who's bringing in the expertise? Like, things that I could do is handle the invoices of like paying for who we need to do for that. But there is a lot of work involved in a lot of these outreach campaigns. And what I have, and we can talk about this, it's on the next topic, I think, but they kind of intermingle here when you're trying to decide the parceling out of these funds, is what other counties do. Some counties do nothing. No outreach, whatever, they just wait till people come to them. Other counties, like Harmon Oaks, goes around, she goes to sportsman shows, she goes to rodeo, she goes all these and sets up booths and does all of this work because she's personally invested in this as a committee member and as a rancher who could be affected by that. And so like, things to think about of like how those resources are actually being allocated amongst the committee members and how those, yeah, we could rent a booth at the Sportsman Expo, but who's manning that booth? Who's doing all those details? So again, I can provide some support, but I just wanted that to be part of the consideration of the funding allocation as well on how, it's a little cart before the horse, but just for, if we're gonna keep back $8,000, how are we feasibly going to use that and support the use of those funds?
Sure.
Or another thing is you could keep those back and then in 6 months' time, if there's still not a way for the committee to use those, then allocate it to Long Hollow or if we for something else come up. I mean, there's a variety of ways.
Anyone
But
applies for prevention, maybe put that key
Yeah,
that sleeve as
yeah.
well, we can add to other
yeah,
plans.
it just has to follow that calendar year or we give it back.
Well, as far as grant funds for outreach and education, I just learned from Ellie Gage, she said that, there's been a newly revived, it's called the Deschutes Livestock Association. And, she gave me the president's name and number. And that might be a direction for getting names of ranchers that might be interested. For instance, I'm going to bring up, later on, maybe asking for some grant money for, a range rider that does this nonprofit in the state of Washington. He was here in Oregon the last 2 weeks, and he talked to how many ranchers? 33 ranchers in Morrow, Crook, and Grant County, and 25 of those are interested in using his range riding school. And he has a nonprofit. I'd like to get him back into Deschutes County because he was at all these other counties. I would think some of that grant money for education and outreach would be good. But we need names of ranchers, some connection where that can be advertised.
Aaron,
Scott-
Aaron is
Scott
a
knows a lot
good
of people.
resource for that, and
And you
Yeah,
are,
happy to help out.
okay, I'll get your contact number.
Sure, I'll get you my
Yeah.
information.
Now, is that gentleman strictly like range riding? Is that?
He does it,
And how many,
uh,
how many allotments are there on rangeland in Deschutes County?
well, for
Yeah,
instance,
Oh.
without answer, I'm afraid. It's a
Oh,
good
okay.
question, but
Then he-
I didn't know
the BLM would know. You're a wetland.
Right.
Has you on.
Ashanti's, he said, was 100,000 acres, and that's
Yeah,
huge.
there might be 3 allotments or 4 allotments.
Yeah, and I don't know how many.
His was also over 2 counties and 1,
Yeah, some of,
tribal
so
land,
we have to
yeah.
just do Deschutes County, but that's what I'd like to know. I have not contacted, the president. I don't know if anybody knows him, Dave McMichael.
I met him at the inaugural meeting of the Deschutes Land Livestock. And unfortunately, I was out of town when they had their next meeting.
Oh,
I didn't make that one, but I'll be going to the next one, and I have his email address.
okay, yeah, I have just a phone number, but anyway,
There's my contact.
oh, thanks.
And I'd be interested in going along to those. I was in Australia when the first one kicked off. But I'd be interested in going along to the Deschutes County Livestock Association, just kind of wandering around.
Oh, just
Sort
sort
of
of,
people.
yeah.
and maybe if they're willing to sponsor an event, the committee could give them funding to help whatever.
Yep.
Supplement their, versus having to take on the work of organizing their own workshop and having maybe a organization or, Ellie's organization. Ellie's gonna be there on the 12th too, so I can talk to her about that as well, but, that would be could potentially be a good avenue to start out with is one of our partner, cause you organized the Prime Bill meeting.
I did, I was
Yeah.
on the Prineville Wolf meeting, yeah, and I can help with this workshop.
So
That's what you're saying is getting this gentleman with a nonprofit here to do a workshop.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Daniel Curry is.
yeah, I think that's one idea. of
Grab
what-
one of these.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
grab it, yeah.
And it gives his, website.
Yeah, we put on workshops all the time, so
Hmm.
happy to help.
So that could be the
So
way for the
you're-
committee to do
You're
this.
usually a point of contact for a lot of ranchers and farmers
Mhm.
for various reasons. So you're a good person to have information about this committee to pass on to people you talk to.
Oh,
I'd-
yes.
I'd imagine, like, so us using Scott as like a conduit, because he's out there on the field a lot, traveling. Been at my place a couple of times. and I
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very handy to have, so that's a version of outreach is Scott.
Thank you.
You bet, my pleasure.
Do you need money, Scott?
I'm sorry.
This new extension is on your phone.
Oh.
Well, for instance, when, the grant money was sent for, Daniel Curry to come down, the Humane Society of the US actually paid him a grant, came to $2,500 for him to be here for about a week, but he traveled all over the state, as you can see. And it barely covered it. I think he was over that. So that gives you an idea. If you're just coming to one county, just about what might be needed. So.
Aaron pointed out to me today, he says, we only have two areas of known wolf activity. Metolius and very southern edge of Deschutes County, and the rancher there that could possibly get depredated at some point is actually in Klamath County. So he figured that if there wasn't any depredations there, it'd be in Klamath County. So we aren't at great risk yet here. That could increase, of course, who knows? But Aaron is in contact with a lot of these ranchers himself. He's gotten to know them, the ones that will let him on their ranches. There's some that won't. Won't even talk to him. So he says, you know, he can only do what he can do, but he does talk to him, try to talk to him and make them aware that they're in an area of known wolf activity, and he's feeling, I think, a little more comfortable that the pair out there, they may or may not breed in the Metolius region. There haven't been any further attacks on depredations on cattle out there. He didn't really have an opinion as to why, but I think the ranchers are, like Sarah Lee said, are simply much more aware, doing a better job, and once, you know, it happened, they started really paying probably closer attention. I was driving around out there the other day and I saw at least 50 elk and probably at least, you know, more deer than that. I mean, that is a winter range out there for deer and elk. So it's not that the wolves don't have quite a bit to eat.
I'd love to ask our livestock producers and large animal veterinarians. I mean, if a lot of the depredation activity happens when there's calves, small calves, I mean, is this the window right now when this stuff would be happening? When we you know, like kind of the, is there like a seasonality to depredation where, you know, there's a time of the year where it's more likely to happen? I would expect that to be when the calves are small, but is that, or is it a risk all year round?
Each producer varies their season. Like out in Powell, their calving's over. Of course, that's per calving, but each one does it different.
Yeah.
Pick a different time. I think the other prey availability, because the fawns will come up for a little bit later, spring and summer. What
Well,
else is
yeah.
available?
That's why some ranchers, it's suggested that they change the time that they're calving more towards the season that the elk are having their progeny, and the deer having their fawns. And some are adopting that, as we had in our workshop. Some of the ranchers were doing that, the Ranching with Wolves workshop. Or they're doing it much earlier, so the calves are bigger when they turn them out on the allotments.
I would add to that, though, that the one of the depredations in Paulina was an 800-pound heifer, and they had no problem taking her down. So I understand your point completely, but just thought I'd throw that in there too. They're pretty impressive animals.
Depends on how hungry they are.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I was asking questions, you know, is there a season when we need to worry about it the most? Just,
Well,
I
the
mean,
easiest pickings is when a calf is just hit the ground. They can't move a whole bunch, mums sometimes confused, not know what's going on. I lost a bunch of calves one year because I calved in a long grass field and didn't think about it. Coyotes would sneak up and get a freshly born calf on the ground and just tear it to bits. So I lost a bunch because they could sneak up and the mums couldn't see them to protect them. And then I was talking to a rancher out just off Highway 20 near Milliken, and he had to set basically a ring of snares around his calving ground because the coyotes, he's calved early, coyotes were just coming in like in packs, just tearing calves up. They were moving around, the mums couldn't keep track. He killed hundreds of coyotes trying to keep them off. So a couple of wolves, but there's other predators out there that do, if not more damage. It just depends on where you are. Yeah.
I'm just looking on the confirmed depredation website. This anecdotal from looking at it, it's like at least every month there's been confirmed depredations. predominantly in the northeast.
Year round.
But year round, and they put their confirmed depredations up by date of when the depredation occurred. May, June, July did seem pretty heavy, but there was confirmed depredations. I don't think there doesn't appear to be a single month where it's missing, but maybe a little bit heavier in the springtime. Early summer.
And I'm just asking because I'm trying to figure out, like where Gordon was going, so, well, geographically, we're sort of narrowing down on where we need to focus with outreach and education now. I'm wondering if there's, a seasonality when it would be really useful to do outreach and education work as well.
Another thing that I learned, and I think this was talking to Ellie, actually in the fall, it hasn't been determined if it'll be October. There is going to be a range riding workshop, maybe in John Day, possibly. But this is gonna be supported through Western Lands Alliance, which Ellie Gage is involved with. She's on the staff of Western Lands Alliance. So one whole day is gonna be on range riding. And hoping also Daniel Curry can get out there because he has this nonprofit school to provide range riders. But there's 4 million is what she told me through the state of Oregon, a grant coming from NRCS, which is USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Group.
Service,
Yeah, service.
And they,
So there's,
yes, has an office in Redmond and our soil and water conservation district is another point of contact with a lot of agricultural producers in our community. Yeah. Soil and water conservation district basically works hand in hand, NRCS.
okay.
The federal agency has the technical assistance of the money and the local district is a connector. All right, so we're already kind of deep into the outreach and education strategy discussion. Before we get any further, it might be helpful for us to kind of decide how much money we're working with. I think the idea was floated, how about we just do 46% to Ashanti and then, then we know what we're working with, the remainder that we're working with. That we probably should do. That should probably be a motion. And before we make it a motion, we should also see if there's other perspectives on that.
Do we also need to make a motion before that motion about the first two? Are we all in agreement that the war type, death, injury and missing, that we are all that funding is going to Ashanti? That we're happy with that situation?
I don't think we're allowed to do the anything else, right?
I would have to check with ODA, but that was pretty straightforward on, that was,
So it's
like, Ashante submitted the supplemental request from him, and it was kind of just went through the committee on that.
Maybe it would be good to do a more motion just to formalize, make that real
Sure.
formal and clear.
So then it goes to you guys and
Commissioner.
commissioners, yeah. Approve it. So I'll motion for the death, injury and missing funds to go to Ashanti and Long Hollow Ranch.
I'd second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Sarah Lee, we're figuring you're abstaining on that one. Okay. Unanimous support for that. And then on to the non-lethal preventative measures funding. And are there any other concepts besides 46% allocation to?
I think we may need to keep some more for other people who want to introduce preventative measures. At least available for till the summer.
Do you want me to just briefly tell you what I've learned from other counties and what they're doing for preventative measures? So Klamath County, I talked with them this morning. I also talked with them during the webinar. They're very successful in their preventative measures. Their ratio, I don't have my tablet in front of me, I should have brought it. Their ratio of depredation dropped drastically. They can't say it's A because of B correlation, but it was like a drastic drop in depredation, and what they implemented was drones. With that being said, most of their wolves are collared down there, so then you can do a drone program. So then I called her up today and just this morning and just asked her, what are you doing with an outreach? She's like, we do nothing. She's like, ODF&W comes to us. We ask them how much they want, and then they implement the program. So they do it for drones and they do it for range riding, and ODF&W does it all. They do the range riding, they do the drones, they manage the whole program. With that being said, our ODF&W contact, Aaron Pott, is incredibly busy. He has 16 counties and all in the Northeast. I have not touched base with him. I can do that going forward. Seeing Aaron Pott or Andrew Welch, who is the regional director, I think, here for Central Oregon from ODF&W. Like, so that's who Aaron talks to or reports to. Aaron is a full biologist on the ground. So I don't know if they have the capacity or if they're offering that. ODF&W or Klamath County had a good relationship with their ODF&W person who was there for a very long time, just recently retired, but the new person came in, was trained to do that program. So great use of resources, was able to implement that countywide, but they had a state agency resource that we don't know if we have yet. Wheeler County and Grand Crook County, they just wait until people come up to them and ask them for it. And Wheeler County hasn't had, like I said, recently just had their first depredation, but they have very active ranchers on their committees who are invested in this for their own personal reasons because they're ranchers in one country. And then Northeast Oregon, the depredations, it's just phenomenal up there about what's happening. There's a lot of wolves up there, and there's a lot of depredation and impact from the wolves up there. So the depredation, we had, I think somebody came and talked to us and said like they're doing a drone, they're trying to do a drone. Oh, maybe Sunny was telling us they're trying to do a drone program through the Tri-County area up there. So they're trying to implement some of these things that have been successful in other parts of the state. But so that's just some basic information. I have not heard, and this does not mean it doesn't exist. I haven't reached out to every county, and I haven't I asked this question on the ODA webinar, which was not about this, but just to try to get information. But I don't know if other counties are actively doing preventative measure outreach and getting more people coming to them requesting funds. It does appear anecdotally from my conversations that once a depredation happens, and these preventative measure discussions kind of naturally follow that depredation. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of proactive preventative measures prior to depredation. Of course, I would be grateful, but
Are the preventative funds only for the known wolf activity area?
it's a great question. Missing and depredation are, but not preventative measures.
So that even if there's no known wolves, you can. But it's not there.
Great question.
Do we know what the drones do? I mean,
I think they play
know where the
music
wolf-
and noise where the wolves are. So and I only know this from when Sunny talked to us, so we all heard what Sunny was saying. But it particularly works where there's collared wolves, because they can then track where there's collared wolves and then they can go in. So it's better than like a radio transmission thing, because the drones have better range, and then they can go in and try to scare them off away from where they know livestock are grazing or where there's ranches are active.
Was Aaron doing any of that this winter? I saw him and a guy out there with a drone. I was just wondering
Good
if they were
question.
looking for the wolves or if they were trying to shoot them away, because they're right next to the ranch. When I didn't see him on the side of the road, but
Was that in Deschutes County?
that was right down by Long Pole Ranch.
Yeah, I don't believe that. So I know that he's been out there a lot. Maybe Sarah Lee can answer this better. I don't believe that the last update I heard from Aaron where those wolves were not collared. So I doubt.
Well, I didn't know if they were just scaring them off with the drone, or I was just wondering.
I don't think that. So from what I've heard is that the drone program works when they're collared, because they know where they are versus not knowing where they are, unless there was sightings. I can't answer that. I guess I don't know.
That's correct. And the wolves out here are not collared, at least up here in the North County.
I'd propose the idea of we kind of designate an amount to Long Hollow Ranch, set aside a portion for preventative measures or outreach. And then if we don't spend that within the time or no one comes to us for it, we can allocate that money at the end of the year to if say Sarah Lee, Long Hollow Ranch spends more than our allotment on preventative measures, say they get their collars or their range rider, so like collars.
Second round of funding.
Yeah, we can give extra funds that we haven't used to them as long as they have used. They purchased something for preventative measures, so the money's not just kind of going back to the state. But obviously it has to be, you know, of use and proven that it's a purchase of value.
Sequentially, can we do that? Like, could we say, okay. The tower, the collars, and the range rider are all eligible uses right now. But these $5,000 that we're holding for preventive measures anywhere, if we don't deploy them, then you can go back and apply them to things that you've already purchased, but which were approved as of April 1st.
The committee, the money is gonna come to us very shortly, once the commissioners approve the grant, and then I get it, Nick signs off on it. I'm guessing the funds will come within a week or two from that, and so then the funds will be here, and so then I'll work with finance. If there's money allocated to Samuel to get, or to Samuel's, get those funds over to him, there's paperwork needs to be done, but get those over to him, and then have the other ones sit in a fund here in the county to be used by committee members. And at any point in time throughout the year, those, like I said, those funds can be used for anything, so you can put restrictions on what you think Ashante could use them for, or you could say, we're allocating these funds, you apply for these, you can use them for any preventative measures throughout the year. The state is very lenient on that. There is gonna be some, like, there is gonna be documentation on how they use those funds, right? We're not gonna give them $10,000 and be like, go use them for preventative measures. Let us know what you, like, there's gonna have to be receipts, and
Yes.
I don't know exactly all the documentation, I'm still waiting on that from the state, but you know, there's gonna be some. Clearly some paper trail needed for that, for us as a county and also for the state from that, but yes, those funds, once we get them, we can allocate them and use them for any applicable application throughout the year. The non-legal preventative measures.
I'm thinking specifically of the invisible fencing. If they did go out and spend $25,000 on invisible fencing, we give them 20 upfront now. They show receipts for $25,000. We can say, all right, we can give you.
We have 5 more that we didn't end up
$5,000 that
spending.
we didn't use. You spent it on preventive measures. We know this. Here you go. That's kind of what I, as a backstop for.
Yep.
Money expenditure.
That can absolutely, yeah, I don't see any problem with that from any of my conversations on how we have a lot of leniency on how to use those funds.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of practically speaking, I could imagine one of the ways that this plays out is that it takes us a little while to figure out what outreach we're doing.
Yeah.
And by, you know, these funds need to be used by what is?
Around January 31st.
Okay,
I
so
gotta get you guys.
it takes us a little while,
Yeah.
takes us a little while to figure out what outreach we're doing. And then if we're holding a few $1,000s for somebody else to do preventative work, if we didn't outreach to them until the fall, then maybe nothing comes in the winter, and there are those few $1,000s.
And it doesn't have to be Long Hollow Ranch. If anyone else comes in and says we need preventive measures,
Right,
we could go to them.
right.
A little kitty.
I mean, you know, Johnny, I would be interested, since you were familiar with this zone where this area of no wolf activity. I mean, do you feel like there's what additional value could what could we accomplish with outreach and education in your neighborhood?
Like right now, I'm not extremely worried about having wolves come into our pens. We have cell game cameras out, like we see what's going in and out. It's mostly coyotes, bobcats, and a mountain lion every now and then. I am 3 miles from all of the crow flies, and we've never had a wolf on the camera. So, and I mean, it's pretty much all corners, and they're kind of pinch points, and we calve around the same time they do, and it's not. So I'm not seeing a big need for us to do any preventative maintenance or preventative measures. There's lots of something doing all day. Anyhow, and I'm, you know, the only other big producer around there is, a big Angus place, and, I kind of talked to him about it, we looked at it the other day, and he kind of had the same mentality, we haven't really seen them around, and when they do come, it's in and out, and we haven't had the problem that they have been having, so it's just kind of, there's 2 wolves right now, that, I do see it becoming more of a problem eventually, but as of right now, we're just kind of wait and see. So
Process.
because if we set up, a measure around this pen, well, what if they don't get something out of this pen, it's just, where do we start? Where are they gonna be coming in? What, you can't fight a war if you don't know where the enemy's at, so.
Right. And do, the 2 wolves, the Metolius wolves, I mean, do any of us have a sense of how far they're ranging? And I mean, is it basically you 3, you, Ashanti, and the Angus person, and
I think there's there's
nobody else?
There's an alpaca producer right across the road too, and I think they kind of said something in the paper, they weren't really too worried about it, and
They bring them in at night.
right, or they have electric fence and.
That's the big one on.
That is like 600 or something.
Yeah.
And then they,
That'd be cannon fodder.
I figured,
Wolves.
yeah, and even coyotes alike, they just seem to. Whatever they're doing to keep the coyotes out, and what we have, no fine fence all the way around our place.
I wondered if they'd be interested in more cameras just to watch
Right,
what's happening.
and could that be a measure? I mean,
I can see why
but
not.
then they're around, I mean.
They're not as expensive.
A good
Offer.
offer, hey, are you worried? Well, you'll know.
You should. Yeah.
But I don't know, yeah, I guess.
Steve, how many ranchers are that you see in Deschutes County? There not many? I mean, other than hobby ranch,
Most of them are hobby.
are they? Oh,
And they're closer in, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, you're out in the same, the kind of Madras grasslands between Lake Billy Chinook and Green Ridge and Highway 20, that whole.
So if you went past Rain Shadow Organics and turned right, we're just a couple miles down the road, kind of went right where the big alpaca farm is.
Yeah.
Straight across from that, that's where we have some of our cows, and then we have some of our cows up in Sisters as well. And like I said, I have some game cameras out where I think they would come in, were the only spot that they could come over the fence, but the coyotes come in and out and go for all through the cows, and they kind of coexist with each other now, so I'm not too worried about them, but like I said, we just haven't seen anything over that way yet. Not saying that they couldn't, but I think Ashanti's cows are kind of the happy meal in front of your face when it comes.
They're out there.
If they're looking for something, right?
180,000 acres.
And I know those wolves been bouncing over in, I think it's Jefferson County. Over towards Lynn Miller's place, towards Billy Chinook. And he's actually seen them out, running his cows around, but obviously that's a different county, and that's where I know Aaron and Emily have been they were trying to trap the wolves, put the radio collars on them with no luck.
Aaron told me he had one in a trap last year and it got out before he could get the collar on.
Yeah, and I think they may spend their time more down that way, because I know they get them on the cameras quite a bit more.
Isn't that like the best preventative measure? Is collar a wolf?
Aaron I've heard, well, you were there for that, he was like, collaring is very, people assume that it does a lot more than it does, the collars fall off all the time, wolves don't actually have a super long lifespan. A whole variety, and then depending on how you're tracking with the radio frequency, so I just learned that at the Prineville workshop, but
Yeah.
he
Well,
wasn't.
and they don't have live at the
Right.
moment data on a caller.
it's only point to point, it isn't continuous.
Exactly.
So that you don't know it, by the time you see it there and you go out there, wolf may not be there, it's the last point that it was tracked on the call.
So
maybe these guys were like-
work so well.
Sorry,
So how does that drone system work?
I think in these counties where there's a lot more wolves and a lot more activity, that there's probably a lot more ODF and W out on site looking at it. I'm guessing, I mean, I think, Sonny was telling us about that Tri-County area too, and, hit and miss, but this anecdotal conversation I had with Vicky down in Klamath Falls, the numbers were drastically different from the depredations of pre-drone to post-drone, but their wolves are colored and there are a lot more of them, I don't know how many, and I think they had the support of the state agency on the site running that drone program, so. I'm not sure with two wolves, I don't know, I don't have the expertise to talk on that, but that's just from what I'm understanding, if there's a lot more wolf activity and you have them collared, then typically there'll be more state agencies on site managing that situation.
Is this helping us understand at all what kind of outreach and education we need to do? Not at all. I mean,
Well, if they're
I'm
under-
not hearing, I'm not hearing like, oh, there's a really important opportunity to talk to these specific livestock producers in this area about X.
I like the idea with the camera.
Yeah, but I think it's more this year is gonna be just. We are here, there is things available. Because a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah.
Don't know anything about it.
Newspaper articles, word of mouth,
Yeah,
talking to neighbors.
different producer groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, the livestock association would be a great place to start.
And you said you could put on a conference or, yeah, and it with the range rider. What Sarah Lee said is they start using range riders or a range rider, and she thinks that I'm not, hope I'm quoting her correctly, that's really helped, or they haven't had any issues since then. That's been effective. So maybe that's at least spend some of our money on that. And especially because maybe we could pass it off to the Livestock Association to hold that conference.
Hold up the conference, set up the workshop or
Yeah,
discussion or whatever you want to call
and if there's some funding needed, we could provide, you know,
You mean like promotion of the effectiveness of range riders?
right. With this person that Donna knows, bring him in to discuss it and teach ranchers how to do it and whatever.
Sarah Lee, is that a good, I mean, do you feel like Gordon quoted you well or kind of captured something that, you know, things that you have said is, do you feel like range riders are a piece of the, you know, lower levels of depredation this year than last year?
Yeah, I think the range riding is really effective, and also just talking about collaring. I mean, it would be really great to get a collar on a wolf, but one of the things with having the collared cows is you can see when they're getting antagonized because of the way they move, and so you know, I think there's a lot to be said for the collaring.
That's
And
the
being able to
capital.
also, yeah, being able to also focus, you know, your efforts on the range riding, because when you're covering 18,000 acres, you know, daily, it's just a big circle to ride, you know. Like we have 6 horses to get that done on a daily basis. Like to, you know, one horse for a circle per day, you know, so one day per week. Anyway, is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
back to the specific funding.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're outreaching and educating about is the effectiveness of range riding.
Could you put together a budget and make an ask of our committee?
To put on a workshop?
Yes,
Absolutely.
would that be a good place to start?
Working with extension?
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. I just like the Wolf Workshop as an example, we spent $400 on pizza for lunch. And $354 to reimburse the speaker, but that was just for travel. That we didn't pay him anything. So I don't know what this fellow charges, but that at least gives you an idea of us. So it's at $700-800. And then plus whatever compensation you asked for.
And what about outreach to get people there?
It's a good point. You will spend a little, if you wanted to advertise on Facebook and And we usually, I drive to the feed stores and hang up posters and that doesn't cost anything. But
Cost your time.
yeah, it does.
And printing and putting it together.
Yeah, that's true.
And you guys got your email list, you have a big email list of OSU's.
We've got some, yeah, but the Livestock Association is brand new in Deschutes County, so I'm still
Oh, you're going through
pretty
that.
fresh on that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
My other question would be the amount of ranches that use or need range riders in our county. Like, it might be worth, but I can see the value if it was like an open door to all the counties, for all the range riders, you'd probably get a big enough show to put on like a class, a conference, whatever. I don't know, and I don't foresee there being a huge amount of Deschutes County ranches that use a lot of range riders. I don't know, what do you know?
no, that's a good point. We had 41 come to the workshop in Prineville. We had a few folks I know were from Redmond area, sisters also. But
That was just for wolf interest though, right? That wasn't for the range riders.
that was a wolf depredation workshop where they talked about preserving the scene of the crime, so to speak, because it is. And talked a little bit about wolf biology, how much they travel in a day and what some of their habits are. Talked about oh gosh, what else? Compensation, preserving the crime scene, biology. I guess that was most of it.
So of those, how many range riding operations? do you
No, it didn't really talk much about that. Most ranchers are pretty knowledgeable about the range riding. They've been, that's something they've done for a long time. Although not, now it needs to be ramped up, like Sarah Lee's already said. Because in the past, there wasn't, you go out and check your cattle once a week, say as an example. Now you need to be checking them every day. Yeah. But as far as getting a sizable crowd there, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what, I mean, yeah, I think you could, surely you could get 20 or so.
Yeah.
The other spin
It
fee,
could be a broad, it could be a like. All kinds of measures. I mean, if you're gathering people, maybe it's more of an attraction if you talk about, we're gonna talk about drones and range riders and land breed and.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Electric fences, things like that.
Maybe for the-
Deschutes County Livestock Association, could they draw in people from other
It
counties?
would sure be a great place to start for reaching out and getting a hold of those, who's signed up so far and all that, yeah.
Okay.
So I wonder if maybe for the first workshop, instead of bringing in an expert from out of state with a lot of funds associated with that, doing introductory preventative measures and how the LA gauges and even Carbon Oaks of the world come in, or maybe a little bit more localized knowledge come in and give a broader as the first kind of conversation of these are the different things, and just a suggestion, but I think bringing in, considering the pool of funds there is to work with, bringing in an outside expert who just sounds like doesn't even cover his costs, but still is a little bit pricey for a county to financially support that there is some local knowledge here. Ellie lives in Cal Butte, I think, so.
it's very specific, and I don't think, like, range riding is very specific of a job. It doesn't apply to most farms locally. In Deschutes County, most Deschutes
Well,
County
maybe
farms,
Deschutes County,
yeah, aren't
but
that large. Long Hollow, there's a couple of big ones, but most aren't that big. They don't need range riders, so you're not kind of serving the masses, you're serving a few. I don't think that makes sense.
So now that you mentioned this, so John Williams was a speaker at our Prineville, and he is actually coming at the invite of there's a Tri-County Cattle Women's Association, and they're having him come on April 10th at 5:30 or 5 o'clock in Cal Butte. And so when we first started talking, I was really focused on this, helping you with this fellows workshop, but if you're talking, then you start to talk about more of a general. And that's what this talk is that we did in Prineville, and it will be duplicated in Powell Butte on the 10th.
That's what we have. What about it, bro?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess one of the questions is, if we're talking about another general workshop, is it even needed? I mean, or will people have gone to Prineville or to Powell Butte? And
I would think this one will handle exactly, sorry, I didn't jump on that quicker. I was.
It's not, definitely not too late. to hear about it.
But yeah, if you wanted a general workshop, that probably will gather most of the customers, would be my best guess.
Is that one day,
More-
one day?
It's a
Or just-
3-hour workshop, I believe, 2 to 3.
Do you need more funding or advertising?
Oh, thanks. I will contact, I owe her an email anyway, the president of the Cattle Women's and, see,
As long as we can broaden it to
yeah, see,
more of an informational type of thing.
yeah. I'll get a hold of her and then, I have your email, don't I?
Yes.
I think.
And I'll just say this is just one person's opinion. I was there at that workshop, you know, it was great, well attended. And John had a lot of information, but I would say that maybe wasn't touched on a lot of like very specific things that ranchers could do for preventative, non-lethal preventative measures. There was a lot of information on the impact of wolves in the state and on the impact that they had on livestock and herds, and, you know, some good videos of animation, not animation, but you know, that those videos that he showed about knowing that there was a predator, not knowing what that predator was, a predator there, and like kind of the impact it had on cattle. But this could just be me and my takeaway from that, but I didn't hear specific on like, this is how you put up flattery, this is how, you know, range riding can, you know, if you increase your range riding by this, and talking about game cameras, like I didn't come away with takeaways on specific implementation of
No, I
non-lethal.
think that's fair. It was more
measures.
of a 10,000 foot
Yeah,
look down.
so there could still be a need in the county for,
And that same thing is gonna happen at Powell Butte okay, so then.
As far as I know.
This is like chapter 2. We could do
Is there someone available locally that could describe the non-lethal?
well, so I'm going to that, so it'll be interesting on April 12th when I go to Carmen's Ranch. That's what she's having, like ODA, ODF and W to actually walk her through her ranch. I'm like, how would you address these preventative measures? Ellie Gage is gonna be there as well, and she's a vast source of knowledge. She is an incredible source of knowledge on these particular things. So I do think that there is information being gathered and being expanded upon for this.
And I mean, you know, like every day we build more local expertise. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Ashanti could come and talk about electric, the collars and electric fences, or,
Range rider?
or, the effectiveness
they
of
learned
range
in their year,
riders at Long Hollow Ranch.
He was actually really Ashanti came and spoke at our first meeting, most of you remembered, and I learned a lot of information from him there, so yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, I think the knowledge is building. And there's,
And you got these drone experts in Klamath County, and you get, we could round up people from just a couple of adjacent counties probably, and have a pretty good panel. Or, series of presentations.
Just on my 46%, I was under the impression, or I guess my math was flawed because I didn't account for the death and injury. Those
So,
are a lot of
when I
100%.
this is my math that's flawed, when I sent out the picture change last Thursday, when we got the numbers, I was like, we got funded at 46% for preventive measures, but my calculation, the 46% is correct, for the whole pool, it's 46%. For the preventative measure funding, we got funded at 40%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my math.
Oh, I was doing that too.
Okay,
Okay.
But then that would only leave, there wouldn't be the 8,000, right? It would only be 4,000 left over. After-
46%,
If we were to get.
40%.
Right.
Wait, 40% of 28,000
Or just a.
So obviously they're going to get 100% of the death and missing, correct?
Yeah.
So then there would only be 40%, if we were gonna, what? We only got 40% of what,
Of the ask.
of the ask for the prevention. So then, if we did that at 40% of the 45,000. There would only be $4,479.75 left after giving them their debt of what was awarded out of the 32,000.
So
Right.
I understand what you're doing. So, and that's correct. That was how I think about this too. So 40% of what Ashante asked for total of the total 45,000 that he asked for is
28,900, right?
I didn't do the math. I was stressing you.
Okay.
But I could do that really quickly. 45, 9,000, 18,000. 18,000 is 40% of 45,000. If my math is really quick. So then that leaves 10,000 left over for the county pool.
Right.
The committee pool.
Right.
That if one of the ideas on the table from Johnny, and just do a quick time check, we're at 7:20.
Yeah.
One of the ideas that Johnny floated earlier in this process was to fund the request of the preventative measures from Long Hollow Ranch at 40%, because that's what the state allocated, was 40% of our total preventative measures. So if the committee went that route, that would provide, separate from the depredation missing, strictly for non-lethal preventative measures, that would provide 18,000 to Long Hollow Ranch, if my quick math was right there, and then 10,000 left over sitting in the committee to use throughout the year, or potentially reallocate some of those funds to Shante later on.
I'm fine with that as long as it's the reallocation later on. Yeah. If it comes to that, you know, we find ourselves here, yeah.
Since we are 10 minutes to 7:30, let me just confirm that there's nobody who wants to give public comment. Then we can circle back to this for the remainder of the
Yep.
meeting, okay. All right, so is that gelling into a motion? 18,000, 40%, 18,000?
The math is there, but I don't foresee us using the whole $10,000 if they're gonna. Yeah.
After all that discussion about
Yeah.
like, well, what are we gonna do in a workshop anyway?
Yeah.
But
But that at least has some thought behind it, instead of just like, how much this.
Yes,
you could round it to 20, just to
Yeah.
make a nice number.
Yeah, it seems to me like holding on to, you know, money for later, and that gives us like so much time, you know, the majority of the year to potentially do outreach, and if we don't, then we can like apply again, because like Long Hollow will spend all the money, you know? I mean, we've already got the collars and stuff coming and all those things. So like, so it just seems really fair what Jen had lined out there at the end, kind of in conclusion.
Johnny lined it out. Don't want to take credit for it.
Kind of the backwards convoluted way. I don't know.
But I mean, to what Steve said, you know, I'm having trouble picturing us spending $10,000 on other outreach, education, prevention work on other livestock producers operations in the time frame that we have. See, I mean,
But we don't know.
but we don't.
Drone, I think was $10,000, is that correct? Didn't we hear that from,
What was?
the use of a drone, wasn't that 10,000 that we've heard in the past?
Yeah, it just seems like the drone isn't really on the table for Deschutes County. Like that
No.
hasn't really come up
No.
as an effective use of preventative measure, you know? It's expensive and we don't have collared wolves.
And just for the record, I have not heard a drone price. Maybe Sunny said it, I missed it, but I don't. I think they're very expensive, but we don't know what that entails.
I think that was it from Heidi
Oh,
that
yeah.
spoke to us from Grant?
Oh, could be,
I think she might have.
because they're the
mentioned
ones looking into it.
Yeah.
But no. So you were saying, you were saying that you would give them more?
I think
or-
just get 20 grand, long hollow, we keep it in the bank. We put it to outreach, but we hold it in the bank as well for anyone that comes to us needing prevention measures during the year. We've got $8,000 in the kitty. If we don't spend it, we ask Sarah Lawrence and Ashanti to provide receipts for their collar system. I mean, they're gonna have to do that anyways for 20 grand. It's over 20 grand and they can prove that they've spent over 20 grand, we can top off their preventative measures expenditures with the remainder of the kitty. If we don't spend all of it, back to the government. And to be seen again.
If anybody really likes that, you can say so moved.
No one likes it.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I don't disagree with it, I just so moved.
There we go.
Is there a second?
You had me there.
Second.
Right,
Okay.
more discussion? All right, let's call for the vote. All those in favor?
Right.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Job. We got there.
We got there with 4 minutes left in the meeting. Good. So, all right, so that's the preventive measure funding for Long Hollow Ranch, and then we've got $8,000 for outreach, education, other preventative measure activities. We have at least the idea of a preventative measure workshop kind of kicking around,
Or
and
general informational
yeah.
initially.
Or I mean, do we feel like the general informational workshop is
That's right.
covered?
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about like maybe kick in a little bit of money for that. And then have a kind of chapter 2.
From that, generate a Deschutes County producer list that would be interested in more specific.
To get the wide approach with the Cattlemen's Association or other groups, and then put the feelers out there and set up an event maybe later in the year where those people that want more details will come to the more detailed one. I think this early stage is just about getting the word out that we kind of exist and how we go about having this,
And that there's funds available.
and then this one's available.
To me, that's the big one, is they don't know.
Just get ready for everyone coming out with it. Funds available, what?
I mean, I'll also flag that, you know, for outreach activities, just building your list is, you know, identifying the people who you need to outreach to is all, I would consider that part of outreach. Or, you know, building your list and kind of mining whatever data sets there are to kind of figure out who's a livestock producer. Or identifying the, you know, the specific channels that we're gonna communicate through. Oh, we can really reach people through OSU extension, and, you know, we can, you know, we recruit the NRCS to do this, we recruit the cattlemen to do that, and things like that. I mean, just kind of having a plan, you kind of, you know, an outreach plan. Here's who we need to reach. You know, here's a list of names and addresses. Here's, you know, communication channels to connect with these people through. That is actually, you know, I would consider outreach planning, outreach work. You could consider using some of the funds to something, do an outreach plan. Another thought. Maybe we'll do stuff. Yeah, because like Jen said, it basically, we want her to work on stuff, has to happen during committee meetings.
Yeah.
So you know, some of this small.
Donna, would you be willing to work with this first informational and work out who we can follow through with?
Yeah,
Or
I can,
some
I
type like
can
that.
be in contact with you
Good.
and,
Okay, offer it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or a two employee.
We got money, it's okay.
We'll figure out a way to spend it. I mean, we'll figure out some outreach for you.
And then
Maybe
we,
do a survey at the meeting, or
Yeah.
something, or send out a survey.
yeah,
to the membership list, I'm sure we can come up with some good ideas.
Yeah, and just put another shout out, even though it was said before that Daniel Curry is only working in Washington, he really isn't, he's working all over the West. He's gone to the Southwest, he spent a week there, he spent a week here in Oregon to all the counties that were having, Aaron asked him to go to the counties that were having a lot of depredation. And he teaches, his nonprofit is a school for range riders, he will teach them how to do it properly, not just a few hours a day, but 24/7. That's what he does.
Okay,
And he does it himself.
Yeah.
And if you watch the video, it'll show what he does.
I'll check it out
So,
tomorrow when
yeah.
I'm in my office, yeah.
Yeah.
And just to confirm, Scott, you said
10
10th of April. This is the cattle women's or just the general?
Yeah, it's the Cattle Women's is putting it on, and I believe it was April 10th. And pull it up here, yeah,
Maybe Sarah Lee can go to that.
maybe. Shoot.
Is it only women allowed? Is it that strict? What's going on here?
Oh,
Discrimination going on here?
come on.
Sure, it's not just put the money in there.
I'll see if I can get some more information and forward it to you folks.
That'd be great. Yes. Would it be on their website or anything like that?
I don't know, and honestly, I'm just getting to know them too. So I apologize, don't have more for you, but I will pursue that tomorrow and then.
You can send it to me and then I'll send it out to the
That'd be
group here.
okay?
Yep, absolutely.
I'll get it figured out for you.
We want to briefly, not to end the discussion, but to end that, do we want to briefly talk about next meeting
Yeah,
and agenda items for next meeting?
yeah, I mean, it sounds like that missing animal methodology and criteria, that's a possible item for next meeting. It seems like more outreach concepts or, you know, should we just get some cameras and for, you know, with our preventative measures money, you know, more discussion of preventive measures broadly and outreach and education being a subtopic there. Other thoughts on?
Would it be possible to get some data on how many commercial cattle herds there are in the two known wolf area of known wolf activity? Are there 10? Are there 100? Are there 6?
The new National Ag Statistics Survey just came out. I wonder that it wouldn't have some information for us in that.
For Deschutes County?
Yeah, it's for everywhere and you can look it up by county, I believe.
Yeah.
I'll add that to my list.
That'd be nice to have, maybe on the agenda, just, it'd be nice to know. I mean, are we only dealing with like 2 ranchers? Or are we dealing with, you know, at least a couple more here and there? And because I think an awful lot of Deschutes County is so far away from the Cascades and the areas of normal activity. They will move. They've come through, you know, Upper Klamath Marsh and they're down into Silver Lake and, you know, they'll range around, but and they've depredated down there too.
I mean, how far out of the timber do you find, you know, wolf act, you know, real serious wolf act?
Well, they can range 60 miles in a day.
Yeah.
When they have their aqua, it's a 9-mile radius, so you circle that and that's they aren't confined in that 18 diameter circle. They can certainly range 30 to 60
Yeah.
miles a day easily.
They
So-
like prefer the forested areas, so when you get down to Klamath County, you got the Fremont-Wayneema National Forest that goes a long ways east and you get up into the Sycan Marsh area and all that and Silver Lake.
You know, the deer heart.
Yeah.
wilderness.
Yeah, they will.
Can Marsh is still forested though, I mean, you know, eastern
Yeah.
Deschutes County
Isn't really.
isn't.
In Northeast Oregon, they've had wolves cruising across irrigated pastures and through backyards and different things without too much fear.
But I mean, are you gonna, when you've got an ocean of sagebrush and juniper, are you gonna find wolves hanging out there? I mean, they might be passing through,
Yeah,
but
maybe
that's,
dispersing.
Compared to forested land, that's what you're saying.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wherever the deer and elk.
Deer and elk
out
are what
there,
they really,
You know,
yeah.
sometimes
we-
deer
we
and
have-
elk are out in the.
We have ranchers out in far eastern edge of Deschutes County, but, you know, it's not near
Not
any,
likely.
it's not near the forest, so
Be very unlikely, I think. But that's what I was thinking is, how many ranches are really at risk?
in the zone,
Yeah,
yeah.
Just wondered how we would determine what's at risk. Do you want maybe potentially we could invite Aaron back,
We could have.
Aaron and Emily back, to, provide additional education on, things have changed a lot in the last year. We've had two new committee members since Aaron's last been here. So, we could, or Ellie, like, there are people that we could bring as, kind of, instead of trying to like figure these out in the committee members, maybe start with a speaker who addresses or provides some institutional knowledge on some of these questions and then get into some committee business.
I'll bet Aaron could almost tell you.
Mhm.
He gets around.
Tell you who the ranchers are?
Yep.
Yeah, or at least give us a better idea of, where the potential problem is.
Yeah.
That we should be trying.
He did say that there's still just two in that Matholius pack. But he's, doesn't know, they might have pups this year. All of a sudden there might be 7.
But one of the Deschutes River, upper Deschutes River, collared wolves went clear down to almost to Lake County. Around there and set up with another wolf.
Well, it's
So-
just, they're dispersing.
She dispersed. And she was the only radio colored, so right now the Deschutes County, upper Deschutes wolves are not known
No
where they
collars.
are, no collars. And
Then
then
you got the Indigo pack just down by
Yeah,
Crater Lake.
Crater Lake, they can easily come here, I mean, we'll
Yeah.
see more wolves.
Yeah,
And there's some in Warm Springs too.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, there's a pack over there.
Right, yeah,
I don't know
At
if
least
they
one.
had
In the White
pups
River
yet,
Basin, right?
Or, I mean.
They've
not-
got some depredations in
some
Warm
dep-
Springs, yes.
Yeah. This year, oh. Cause their records,
Or cattle, yeah.
their records are
Also,
kept
like,
separate.
about
because they're
sisters
correct.
that game cameras.
Yeah,
Conservation.
Few of them, but
If-
we did
if-
work on them.
Um,
I think
They're-
it was-
they have their own biologist on staff.
Okay,
I don't know if
yeah.
it's the same
Sorry,
thing.
they didn't. Okay, well.
They get 7:30 on the dot.
Yeah, not that we can't hang out and continue chatting, okay, people feel free to continue some more informal discussions, but. We've identified, unless anyone has thoughts on additional potential agenda topics for our next meeting, I think. Maybe we, or do you have another one more?
I just wanted to see, did we want to invite Aaron or somebody else back, or do we want to? There's, as we know, there's plenty for this committee to discuss internally. Was there a thought process on bringing or inviting a guest speaker in, Aaron Bott, Ellie, somebody else? Somebody local, it's not asking somebody coming out of the way, or to stick with the agenda topics that have already been identified.
I mean, anything that we wanna really ask Aaron, could it be, I know it's busy, could it be done over email, like just.
Or we could just ask him to be here in the room, so if there's questions. He asked on Friday, he's like, do you want me to come on? He's like, I got something going on Monday, but do you want me to come? I was like, I don't think there's a specific thing for you to address, but you're always welcome to come. So we could give him advance warning, be like, hey, are you available even to join us by Zoom? So when these questions come up, he could pipe in versus having his guest speaker. You do something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do that. And then what's the time frame on the next committee meeting?
Well, our next, from my understanding, the next big kind of thing we need to do is get these kind of guidelines for application sorted out, right? That's our kind of our big chunk. Steps or subcommittee, you reckon? You talk about subcommittee.
It was kind of on the agenda we didn't get to, but yes, subcommittee of 3 or less people who want to do that hard work.
So in my opinion, that's kind of like the group's biggest next step is to get that kind of done, because then we can start sending it out. That's part of our outreach.
Alright,
Is having those things to actually give.
here's material.
Yeah, yeah. So I propose that the next meeting would be more focused on that. And
The
then
dive
talk-
of figuring out the committee process for applying for preventative measures, potentially applying for depredation. Or whether we want to change the process for depredation and a process for preventative measures,
just like what do they need? to do?
application process. Okay.
Then we can hand that out.
It'd be quicker if we had a
So,
subcommittee do it and then
and then
propose.
okay,
I think it would be quicker.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. So we could do Aaron and pick a subcommittee in one meeting, next meeting, and then. subcommittee
And
next
so
time.
Or are you thinking?
No, I'd pick it
identify
now.
subcommittee now?
Oh, he's quick, all right.
Are you volunteering?
Sounds like it.
Yes,
Hey, he's in.
And then, so this is the subcommittee to work on the missing animals.
application forms to the county committee
Okay.
for whatever they want. There's gotta be three separate ones. One for dead, one for missing, and one for preventive measures. And I'm talking about one page.
Right.
I think you can almost use, those OZA
I know, it's not
guidelines, I
much,
mean,
it's just-
just sort of almost print them up
Would
and.
anyone be willing to work with Steve on this?
What's
Thank
the
you.
time, what's the time, is it before next meeting? It kind of depends on the next meeting, is because I'm hectic right now.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. I would sign up, just depends on the next meeting. It's kind of thing.
If that's all decided by you guys,
Yeah,
some committees only meet once a year, some meet quarterly.
When would you want to meet?
To keep the,
Well, you're gonna have that one discussion this month. Right? Which we can't get anything done by then anyway, but at least you can bring out that we are providing materials and getting things organized. And if you follow up with some kind of contact list of people who may be interested in further discussion. And by that time, we need some kind of form available. I'd say within a couple of months.
well, we shoot for
That's
two.
fine,
How about we shoot for
Good
2
job,
months?
Ethan.
2 months from
That's
now.
all you do.
And I guess
It's nice to have somebody with experience to.
one other thing would be, I mean, do we wanna sort of bless a contribution to the April 10th workshop? Sure, because we're not gonna meet again before that.
$100 pizzas, is that what you need?
How much you can?
How much pizza do you need?
Oh,
Too late.
Like cattle women.
yeah, I'd have to check, it's not really my meeting, so I gotta check with them and see. If they need any donations and try to get back to you ASAP. And then,
And we can only donate if there's some sort of.
Again, the measures have to, for preventative measures, but it does sound like, sorry, I was just thinking like, we could donate. There is some financial paperwork that I have to do to get somebody set up as a new vendor and be able to pay them and to be able to justify that cost. So there could be a reimbursement funds on that. When was it? It said May 10th,
April 10th.
April, oh.
Probably not gonna happen.
Plan for
This is my own
Yeah,
sanity,
plan
maybe
for our
I'm
own,
going
plan for
for it,
our own
yeah.
preventative measures workshop.
I think it's gonna
Yeah.
say vote on it.
Yeah, thanks, that probably is best. I think the cattle women's has it handled pretty well, so.
Okay, so far Ethan and Steven, you go by Steve or Steven? Okay. And Donna, okay, great, are going to have a subcommittee, congratulations, and they're gonna work on the documentation for depredation, missing and preventative measures. That's standard across the committee for anyone who wants to apply for funds going forward, great. And then, so you guys should all have each other's contact information, reach out to me directly if you want me to start, I can start well, I'll just do this tomorrow, I'll start an email chain with just the three of you, and then you can take it from there, just so you have everyone's information there. And there's no problem with 3 people being on that email
We'll get the
chain.
next subcommittee.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone has to be on one, Gordon. At some point.
Doesn't have to be a public.
No, with the 3 of you,
No,
it has to be 3 of you, you can't have
We're
that.
gonna be super informative.
Brewery.
There you go.
Coming. Do that.
Great, and then, so then do you wanna aim for like June for the next meeting? Kind of try to keep it on a quarterly basis-ish, okay, I'll send out a doodle.
Thank you.
I really appreciate having the next meeting after the election.
He made me replace this.
Oh, no.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
No, I don't think.
There's a little chance. There's a little chance.
You really want out of here?
Yeah.
But one thing I didn't bring up today
So you know. what-
is, I signed up to be the short-term chair for this committee for 6 months. And we're a little past 6 months.
Do you wanna put that on
Such a
the,
good job.
Yeah.
do you wanna put this on the next agenda, is
We
establish a
could put that on the
permanent,
next
yeah.
agenda. I mean, if people want me to keep doing this, I would, I would do it, but I also wanna give all of the
Anyway,
committee members
sometimes, because we
the
share
opportunity to step up
same
and-
email,
step up
sometimes
and
they'll say permanent
take on,
emails, but just so you know, the Donna.
Cause it's a great group.
Donna.
It is. I already know those speaks.
You sort of. But I- So
Can we get to the one lead, sir?
I will meeting adjourned.
Great.
Sort of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again, Jen, for doing basically everything.
Myself.
I enjoy it. I really enjoy this topic, so.